Hey everybody, Pat Benage here, the evolution coach, creator of the 6-week shift, the inner path, and this inspirational blog, SoulTalk. And welcome. It's finally starting to feel like we might be getting a little bit of spring. Had a nice day yesterday. Sun is at least partially out today, and good day to be on the topic I'm on, that I've kind of been on here recently a little bit, but talking about happiness today. And of course, I sent out an email a week or so ago, and I do have my happy webinar this week on Wednesday, how to be happy no matter what. And so I hope you'll join me for that. I'm going to put a link in here if you haven't gotten registered, to go ahead and get registered and show up on Wednesday at 6. And so today, what I want to talk about a little bit is what is happiness? What is that? What's the definition of being happy? It's a pretty subjective term. So, is happiness just having fun, playing? Is happiness being in a good relationship, having a good job? Is it having the things that you want in life? Is it dependent on what's going on, or is it something that we create ourselves from within? And the truth of it is that it's all those things. Happiness comes from any number of sources. But the happiness that I'm not concerned with, but that I'm focused on, I guess, at this point, is what I call true happiness, or an unshakable happiness. And what allows us to experience that, where our ability to be happy is not dependent on any of the things that go on. It certainly can be enhanced by the things in our lives, the experiences that we have, but that it's not dependent on that. Because if it's dependent on what's happening, then if something happens that's not very fun, that you don't like, then your happiness goes away. And this underlying sense of feeling positive, feeling optimistic, feeling just generally happy, it can drop off dramatically if something happens in our lives that disrupts that. And so my goal, and obviously this comes out of my experience of going through depression. I can look back at my childhood, and prior to Mom getting sick and dying, I was a pretty happy kid. I seems like very rarely was I upset. Very rarely was I in a bad mood. It's just, I had a good childhood up until that point. And then everything started to shut down after Mom died. And over time, I became basically an unhappy person. And it was because in the process of trying to protect myself from feeling sad and whatever other emotions were coming up in me, I shut down my internal happiness. And so after a while, I didn't have that support from within to be able to maintain that basic level of happiness. And I think a lot of us over time in our lives, we experience challenges and things, and we let those become the influencer of our happiness. We let them influence how happy we are in our life. And so when things go well, we're happy, and when things don't, we're unhappy. And we lose that that sense of joy, that sense of well-being, that sense of just everything's going to be good, you know, that things are always going to turn out well. And we look at our lives and we see these challenges and we see things that have happened that, at least on the surface, look like it didn't turn out very well, and we sort of attach ourselves to those ideas instead of simply looking within and knowing that even in those experiences that maybe didn't turn out the way we expected them to and didn't feel very fun, might have been painful, that we learned something from that. And in learning from something from that, we get a benefit. There's a gift in it for us. And when we look at it from that perspective, then we can see that in the end, things do turn out. It does turn out okay. Life is beneficial. We benefit from our experience of life. So, getting back to happiness and how we then bring that level back up that we had at some point in our childhood. You know, I mean, some people who've experienced child abuse, they get that short-circuited very early on in their life, but for the most part, most of us can remember back to a point in childhood where we were basically happy. We were happy, you know, as our baseline. That was our set point. It was happy, and so we can get that back, but it requires that we look within for our happiness. That we stop allowing what happens around us to influence how happy we are. And the only way to do that really is to stop resisting those things that show up in life that we're not happy about. If we stop resisting that, then we move into acceptance, and then it doesn't take away our happiness. It doesn't take that away. And because resistance is really the barricade to being happy. if you're not happy about something, it's because you're resisting something about that. And so in order to be happy, no matter what, you have to let go of that resistance. It's a simple thing. It's not that easy to put into practice, because there's always something that's going to show up and it's going to trigger you, and you're going to go, but I'm not going to be happy about this. I'm not going to be happy about this. I don't want to be happy about this. Letting go of resistance doesn't necessarily mean being happy about that thing. I think that's where we get sidetracked sometimes, is that, okay, if I'm standing for this thing, if this is something that's important to me, that it's of value to me, and this over here is in direct conflict with that, then I'm going to resist that. I'm going to fight that. But when you do that, then you're giving up your happiness, because you're fighting. You're fighting something. And rather than doing that, just recognize, and this is always true, recognize that whatever that is that you're resisting, it's actually a part of what you're wanting, just on the other end of the spectrum. And just see it for what it is, and not fight it, because when you fight it, when you battle it, then you bring your energy down toward that level. It doesn't mean, again, resistance is also, avoidance is still resistance. So you can't just avoid it and have it go away and you're going to be okay. I mean, temporarily that might work, but you actually have to look at it and see it for what it is. You have to see it for what it is. Just like darkness is not a thing in and of itself, it's simply an absence of light. And different levels of light, it just means that you're on the spectrum, you're at a different point on that spectrum. So we've got kind of medium light, low light where I'm sitting right now. And if I walk outside in the sunshine, then there's more light. But if I walk into a closet and close the door and I've got no lights on, then I've got less light. So on the scale of things, everything that you resist is part of that same scale of whatever it is that you're wanting. It's just at a different level of it. Just like darkness is at a different level than pure light. And so happiness is the same thing. Happiness is on a scale. But the point of what I'm trying to convey here, I guess, is that to get to that point where you're able to be happy no matter what, then you have to raise your happiness vibration to a point where it doesn't get tipped by those things. It doesn't get knocked off by those things. You create, by doing that, by raising that, you create this inner peace, you create this balance point that allows you to withstand anything. And withstand might not be the right term, but to be able to be happy regardless of what shows up in your life. It doesn't mean, again, that you're going to be happy about this thing, but you're going to be accepting of it, and you're going to recognize that it cannot affect your happiness unless you give it permission. And so stop giving all of these other things permission to affect your happiness. And just be happy. Just be accepting. Stop resisting. And I'm gonna talk about this obviously in a lot more depth on my webinar on Wednesday. And again, I hope you'll join me for that. I've got a lot of material that we're going to cover, and if you haven't, like I said, if you haven't registered, do register, and you actually will get. I've got 3 sort of pre-webinar training videos that talk about a lot of things that will help in creating that new level of happiness for yourself. So thanks for joining me. Hope to see you on Wednesday, and in the meantime, remember to live your life from the inside out. See you next week.